Welcome to I Feel Fat Today. I'm your host, Kelly Taylor. Thank you so much for joining. The intro for today's podcast does not have a video component because I am heading out the door to go see the band Thursday, and I don't have time. But I appreciate you listening, and we're going to do a really quick intro and then get into it with our guest this week. Happy Friday. As always, you know the drill by now. Subscribe to us on YouTube, like and comment on the full video podcast that you see there. We have episodes every Friday on YouTube and everywhere else. After you do that, head on over to Apple Podcast and give us a follow there. And most importantly, leave a 5-star review. Leaving reviews in general helps get the pod out to more people. Let them see it, see what it's about. And if you're a loyal listener, it'll take 2 seconds to write a 5-star review. You don't even have to make it thoughtful. You don't even have to write a review. You can just click 5 stars, but I would prefer if you wrote something. Thank you for that. If you listen on Spotify, you can give us a rating and follow us on there. And if you have anything you would like to give me feedback on when it comes to the podcast, or you want my advice, you can send me an email at ifeelfattoday@gmail.com and follow us on social media. You can follow the podcast I Feel Fat Today at I Feel Fat Today, and then follow me, your host Kelly Taylor, at Hello This Is Kelly on Instagram. I'll post clips from the podcast, let you know when the podcast is out. Like I said, we come out every Friday, and yeah, it's a good time. I don't have anything personal other than the fact that I'm about to go see Thursday play War All the Time, which I'm really hyped about. So that'll be fun. Excited to go do that. And we're just going to get into it this week with our guest. Just a note going into the podcast that you're about to listen to. The sound is a little funny. It's not unlistenable, but it's not the same quality that you're used to getting from Kelly Taylor Studios week after week. But the levels were a little off, so it might be a little quiet in the beginning, and then it gets a little louder towards the end. But it's okay. You can still hear everything clearly. I just want to give you a warning so that if you do hear that, you don't say, hey, what's going on with the audio? I already know, guys. But our guest this week, what a conversation we had. I thought it was great. I hope you find it as interesting as I did. I really think it was fantastic. My guest is actress, stand-up comedian, and psychic healer. Please welcome the very funny Jessica Rotondi. And we're back at the Risque Business News studio. I am here with my guest for this week, Jessica Rotondi. How are you?
Hi,
Did I say your last name right?
Yes.
Okay.
Although it might be technically like Rotondi, but like I don't say it that way. No, so you're good.
Okay. I actually meant to ask you that before we started rolling. I'm like, let me clarify.
No, you did great.
Okay,
And
cool.
I think my name actually fits perfectly with the theme of this because it means rotund, and I'm pretty sure my ancestors were very rotund.
Really?
If they got that name. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, I had some round ancestors. So it's
Italian?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And I think the name itself I'm pretty sure it's Sicilian, but because
Okay.
I'm like almost half Sicilian, but I'm not positive. But anyway, it's Southern Italians, and they were round. Probably involved a lot of cheese.
I love it. I hear people go to Italy and they're like, I ate all carbs and I didn't gain a single
Right.
pound.
And I was just talking about this because I know of a new restaurant kind of on the edge of Red Hook that is Southern Italian cuisine, and they specialize in having really great grain that they're using. So that's a big part of it, by the way, is the grain that's made. It's the reason why a lot of people in America are like, I have an allergy with gluten. It's just our shitty bread here.
Yeah.
But they go to France and they can eat all the fucking bread they want. Is it okay if I curse? Yeah, right?
Yeah, yes, please.
Do you know what I mean? It's the grain
absolutely.
quality. Yeah.
So, friend of the show, May Planert, is currently traveling abroad. She's not in Italy.
I would say
think
in Italy.
She's going to be hitting Itally soon.
But France and a lot of Europe generally. And I just spoke to this guy who is a Michelin chef. So he said there are some good grains in this country. I think they're just not mainstream. You know what I mean?
Oh.
But in Europe, I think overall, he didn't say this, but this is my theory. I think overall the grain quality is better. And that's why the bread is generally better, and probably the pasta too.
Well, okay. That makes
Sorry,
sense.
just I know, totally segue.
I love it. That's
Feels appropriate.
Educational to our listeners. Absolutely. We love talking all things food. But yeah, May has she found out recently it's why am I shitting blood? Oh, a gluten
Is she
intolerance.
celiac? She's celiac.
So
I know there's a difference.
There's a difference. She's like, I hope it's not celiac. I hope it's a gluten allergy, whatever.
I believe the celiac involves more inflammation because I have lupus, so I will be talking about that.
Okay.
A mild case, but I know a good amount about inflammation, autoimmune stuff, because I went through that. And so that's where the body starts attacking itself.
Yes.
So she maybe doesn't have that aspect, which would be great for her, because that's where shit gets really weird.
Yeah. So I was, she's like on this diet where she's not touching gluten, and she's like, I hate to say it, I feel so much better. So much better. Yeah. And I'm like, well, when you go abroad, are you not going to eat? And she's like, no, when I'm going to go abroad, I'm going to eat and see if it affects me same.
I bet it won't.
So we'll see. We'll report back and find out.
And hopefully she knows enough, and just in case she doesn't, I'll just say it, to have a really good probiotic and prebiotic, because that does make a big difference with your digestion. And a lot of people don't know you need the prebiotic to activate the probiotic. So you want to make sure you get both.
I did not know that.
Another tidbit for all you people who care about inflammation. But everyone should have that, because a lot of the food we eat, even healthy things like beans, are attacking our intestinal lining. And that also causes more inflammation.
Well, because it's like, I feel like in school and just in general, you hear like the more fiber, the better.
Right. No, I know. Believe me, like I've read so many different books on what food is good for inflammation, autoimmune illnesses. It can make your brain explode because there are some contradicting things. And I think a big part of this is a lot of people don't understand a lot of this. Even doctors understand some of this themselves. Probiotics, prebiotics, inflammation, all that stuff, especially digestion, is a little bit of a complicated topic. So yes, I agree. It's very confusing, but there's a couple of podcasts I really like. I don't know if I should give a shout out, but Dr. Gundry, he's a little cheesy because he has some really cheesy YouTube ads, but he was a heart surgeon, and he kept seeing people who were eating well having these problems, and so he dived into learning more about this, and he that's his main focus, is talking about what affects the our intestinal, our lining. And I forget the term. There's a couple different things that specifically, our body doesn't know how to digest. And beans has it a lot, peanut butter has it a lot, certain things that you would think are healthy. And he kind of breaks down why that is and what to do and stuff like that.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. Dr. Gundry.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm going to
check
that out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's so many different ways we can
I know.
Now.
I want to talk about everything.
I know. What's coming front of mind to me right now is just based on what you were saying is, do you have any knowledge or know anything about the gut and the mind being connected? You mentioned something about
yes.
What inspired this is you saying, there's all this stuff out there and can make your brain explode with what's right, what's wrong. And then I'm thinking oh man, if we're eating stuff that's making our guts unhappy, that's going to make our brains explode.
Right. In a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
Well, kind of. This is sort of relevant to what you're saying, but it's not completely answering your question, but I'm formulating my answer on that because I have a bunch of different thoughts.
This is also from left field.
Yeah, no, I love it though. Throw them at me. What I know, I don't know for sure because I'm not a doctor, as much as I might sound one, but even doctors, I think, are confused about this. And this is where there's an overlap between health and spirituality and all that stuff, which I think is a really interesting overlap. There is, and psychologists, professionals actually say this too, there is an overlap between autoimmune illnesses and trauma. And a lot of people have come to believe, I'm sure there's been some fancy studies, a lot of people now in these professions now believe usually when you have autoimmune illnesses, even if they come about in your 20s or 30s or, as an adult, there's a really good sign, although I kind of feel like most people experience this, but there's a really good sign you experience a lot of trauma as a kid. But at the same time, like a lot of illnesses, it can also be environmental and obviously also diet and things like that. So for me, I'll just say, yes, I had a good amount of trauma as a kid, which is subjective. I think most people have. although some more extreme than others. But I had a healthy amount of trauma as a kid. But I also lived downtown by 9/11, by the Twin Towers,
God.
and I lived in the East Village, but still, probably I think it was within a mile. It might have been a little bit more from the towers. I had a cloud of whatever it was, a lot of things that was over my area, my apartment building, for probably 5 to 7 days, and we were taking that in. It's hard to know which of these things happened first. Do you know what I mean? Or which of these things mattered, but I think they both mattered. But in terms of the gut, you said, or the digestion in the brain.
Just the concept of the gut and the brain being connected.
How
if the gut is unhappy, the brain is unhappy.
Yes. Well, I've actually read, I've definitely read so many different things and watched so many different people on YouTube and social media. Some people believe that we have almost like, I don't know if they call it a brain, but like kind of our own nucleus or something happening in the gut that's related to the brain. And same with the heart, these kind of centers that really affect, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So definitely I think these things are correlated. And I also know from my own experience when I was really, really sick, when I first got sick, which often with autoimmune illnesses, it starts with a really bad virus that just quickly goes in a weird direction where you're like, why do I suddenly have arthritis? It started with a fever and a sore throat. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, I'm losing hair and I'm all these different things that are not normal for cold, and often brain fog and depression go with that too, as well, just like memory issues, a lot of cognitive issues. So they absolutely affect each other.
Yeah.
There's such a correlation. It's so extreme. It's hard to know, there's just so many different things that affects with your brain. So absolutely 1000%, these things affect each other.
Going off of what you said about brain fog, I can say personally, I feel like I relate to you in the healthy amount of trauma. It's all on a scale of,
a lot of people when they hear trauma, they're like, well, I had a great childhood.
Yeah.
It's like, well, let's dissect that.
Yeah. I had a roof over my head. I had parents that worked really hard, but still trauma exists. And I always was like, I don't remember shit from my childhood. A
lot of people have disassociated and blacked out certain things.
I remember big moments, and I at a certain age, I remember more. And
totally.
Then,
I think that's so normal.
Well, I was just like, that's just what it is. I have a bad memory. And then I've been in therapy a long time, but I take a shot anytime you hear me say I was in therapy.
Right now.
But I really started getting into deep, it's called somatic experiencing.
Oh, I know. I've recently got into that. Yeah. Which is...
It's like going to the gym.
Yes.
It is it's exhausting. But I am I'm just remembering so much more.
Because your body holds on to these memories physically.
Body keeps the score.
As well as your nervous system, which I have come to learn a lot about in the last couple of years. And I've done all sorts of trauma healings and therapies, but mostly they were emotional and mental and a little bit of body work. But I kind of neglected that part. And I feel like even though I feel like I made huge strides in the other work, it's come to the fight or flight thing is still in your nervous system if you haven't dealt with a lot of memories and issues. And when I think the somatic work, like other nervous system work, it can bring the memories up, but also help you be more present. So it's great work.
Yeah, because I just was lucky enough to find a sliding scale therapist.
Can I get her information after this?
You would love her.
Oh my God, I can't. I'm so excited. If she has room for me.
Yeah, amazing. I didn't know anything about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She completely introduced you to the concept of somatic work?
Yeah, and we had been working together for probably a year.
I think it's become more common, trendy, like a lot of different healing modalities. Yeah.
She brought it up to me, and I was just like, I'll try anything. I'm down for whatever. And she definitely brought me through, took me through the whole you could remember stuff that you cannot believe ever happened.
Totally.
And I was just I just was in a place where I was like, I feel stagnant in my life. I feel like I'm my
Right.
own worst enemy right now. And if this is a possible blockade
Right.
to me being my full authentic self, which at the time I really had no sense of self. I really didn't know who I was. I was like, I will do anything. And
Oh
it's
my
been
God.
a journey.
Yeah.
But I have never been more keenly aware of my boundaries
I love it.
in my life. Shout
Yeah.
out to her.
Oh,
I will
cool.
totally give you her
I would love
info.
that. I've done a little somatic work mostly on my own, but I've done a couple different trauma healing work for years with a variety of healers and therapists that also help you remember certain things in a way that, and I remember a lot of my childhood, but definitely there's certain things you just can't easily remember. I mean, I think that's normal, you know?
Yeah, like I was young.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah, right. It's all kind of there somewhere. But it's kind of amazing. I've done specifically EMDR and IFS, which are, like I said, kind of more mental and emotional, but they're incredible. Like, and I recommend them to everybody. I don't know if you know either of them, but EMDR is really interesting because it literally is eye movement or vibration is attached to memory, and when you literally do this a certain length. It sounds so dumb, but like with the pen or finger or whatever they do, or vibration in your palm, memories just suddenly come back to you, and it's very trippy. You're like, why am I remembering this thing that? And it's all, you're usually working on an incident, like from childhood, but then all these other memories that are associated with those feelings come up, and they're so fucking random. And you're like, my grandma and me at the dishwasher, you know, like just totally random. You're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's so interesting.
Okay, so I'm so glad you brought that up because I said to my therapist, I was like, I'm really glad that we don't do somatic experiencing every session. She's like,
oh yeah, you need breaks.
We wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, you need
like,
breaks between the.
Yeah, it's like we'll go like a few months.
You have to process.
Yeah.
And
so when we do more somatic stuff, she has me hold these like tappers.
Oh, I think she's secretly doing EMDR.
No, she is secretly doing EMDR.
I don't think she's doing that in a bad way, but because that brings up she didn't explain that to you.
Holding this. She maybe did,
and I know, and she's not doing it in like an evil way, but that is contributing to you remembering things.
Oh my God, that is so good to know.
Yes,
she uses a lot of big words, and so
maybe she explained it to you at some point. It breaks down eye movement, and I literally always forget this when I tell people, and I can't direct response or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it's something like that, and it was created many, many years ago. Fun fact, Scientology kind of does something similar. They hijacked it.
Yeah, they did.
And also the Army and different Army organizations use it for PTSD. So it's a very effective thing that like it's become more trendy and known, but it's still not as known as you would think. And one time I asked a therapist who introduced me to it, who was amazing. I don't still see her, but she's great. Why don't more people know about this? And she's like, the pharmaceutical companies don't want people to know about this because then they would sell a lot less. I don't know if this is completely true, but then they would sell a lot less medication. I was like, that makes sense. I also really like IFS, which doesn't use anything like that, but and that's where I've done a little bit of like classes to learn about it, which stands for internal family system. I'm not just going to keep talking about therapies, by the way, but I think these both are so great. If anybody, and they're more trendy, so you can find therapists that know these things more often through a series of questioning. This is what I was talking about earlier. Like we have these, it compartmentalized different parts we created in our ego out of trauma, and it's almost like the therapist is a detective through a series of questioning. The goal is to get to the trauma that these parts are covering up. And it's so simple, but so amazing in its simplicity, kind of. The goal is to let these inner child wounded parts just express themselves. Yes. And because it sounds so simple, but I promise, and this is why when I talk about trauma therapy, I think people are like, what do I have to do? Get like electric shock therapy or something crazy. It's not, it really is not that complicated. And I wish more people, i.e. men, would be more open to this stuff and understand you're not going to lose control. You're not going to your life's not going to fall apart. It's going to enhance your life. It might be messy at times. It's really not as scary as you think. It's literally just letting these parts, and your adult ego brain might be like, this is fucking stupid. Yeah. But if you just give
it is.
Right. And a lot of that is fear-based and also control-based. But if you just give it a chance and also ask yourself, are you happy the way you've been living with like just listening to that adult, not even your adult brain, it's your ego really. That's literally its job is just to protect you.
Yeah.
And literally, you know, like animals, egos are literally just to help them know when they're going to be attacked and stuff like that. And so that's, you know, anyway, my point is the whole system is great. It's just about letting those parts express themselves. And ideally, once you do that, the other parts that protect them calm the fuck down and you can just be more present. That's the goal of it.
Yes. So I'll just say this before we move forward. But what you were saying of like these parts were created to protect ourselves.
Yes.
I've learned and am learning through therapy.
And Somatic talks about this.
Yeah. Well, what I've learned is I've always wondered, like, why do I have this complicated relationship with food? Like, it can't just be.
Right. It's not just, I like food.
and it also can't just be that my mom and grandma took me to a Weight Watchers meeting a little bit too early.
Right.
It can't just be, you know, the fact...
there's more.
There's more. And then once I learned that, wait a second, if adults use, let's say, drugs and alcohol to protect themselves from the world, what's a kid to do? And then I've learned, like,
the easiest thing we can do, which is overeat or use food as a drug.
And like that's why I truly believe food is a drug, because it has,
just like sex, it can easily be drugs or highs that we're not just using in a way that's in the moment or out of survival for food, or with sex just out of love, or
like, but at one point in my life I have described food as my best friend, because that's where I was,
right? And probably
in my life as a child.
It was a love-hate relationship, but yeah, right. It can be so comforting, and a lot of time those different parts I was talking about break down into addictions, or like I was saying, like manager parts that are like, you got to be on top of your, you know, like those kind of parts that are just about structure and perfectionism. And, you know, a lot of time it's almost like our parents' voices that we kind of took on as kids, telling us to be, I mean, I was going to say little boy, but you're a big boy, but I love you. But yeah, so that makes so much sense. And I think food is the easiest out of all the vices. Well, no, I wouldn't say that, because they're all easy to get. Have complicated relationships with. But food can start probably at the youngest age, even more than anything else, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all that to say is you, among as well as being a stand-up comedian and talented writer and all that.
Thank you. I appreciate all of that.
And actress.
Yes, thank you.
You also are a psychic healer.
Yes.
So, first, I want to ask, like, when did you realize you have this ability to heal people with clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience? But first, I would like you to explain to our listeners what those things are.
Right.
And keep going. I just want to make sure the video is recorded.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to check on the cat. I'm like, and I understand why, but because he's awesome. But so, you know, I've talked about this several times in terms of when I discovered it, and it's like a lot of things with childhood, it's I don't know the exact moment, but I will say that as a kid, and I think this is pretty common, as a kid, I was really empathic, and I didn't understand what that was or what that meant. And in empathic, you know, people can confuse empathic abilities with being having empathy, and they're related but different. Empathy is like compassion and you know, relating to people's pain and having a sense of what that feels like and all those good things. But empathic abilities sort of takes it a step further, and there's a variety of different types of this, and a lot more people are empathic than they realize to some degree. It's a spectrum, but when you literally can usually like feel what other people feel or have a sense of it in a intuitive way, where a lot of time where you just look at them and you're like, I just feel that pain or embarrassment or whatever. And sometimes it's not even about looking at them, but even just talking about them.
Yeah.
And there's, like I said, sort of a few different types. And some sort of like weed, it's almost like that's the gateway to psychic abilities. But I do believe probably everyone who's, the cat. I love the cat.
He's going to jump on the table soon.
This is my room. Oh my God, does he usually do this? Sorry.
Yeah, no, this is normal.
Okay, I love him so much. I feel like I have a mini bobcat in my presence. But I think he's hunting for flies or something. But so it is, you know, it is often the sort of opening to psychic abilities. And I think it can be for most people. So when probably I remember doing it as early as like 7, 8, 9, around that time, where friends would talk to me about situations, people, and it's like, what situations were we talking about at 7 to 9? But probably friends that were hurting their feelings, boys they had crushes on, maybe even teachers that were mean to them. And I would just naturally be like, well, I'm pretty sure he's feeling this, or I'm pretty sure she's, I don't think I use that wording, but I would just naturally have a sense of what the other person was feeling. Yeah, a knowing, and I didn't understand what that was. And I would usually give them help or advice, with that knowing. And I just thought that was normal. But I also, around that age or a little bit older, probably other people relate to this. It doesn't necessarily mean you're psychic, but I do think I've talked to a few friends that are healers or psychics that experience this. I was so curious about the unknown, about not only about spiritual things, but about supernatural events. I would take out so corny but so funny, like Time Life books on like the unknown, which I think had a commercial in the 90s. This is really before the internet became a big thing. And I would read about, ESP abilities and, ghosts and telekinesis and all sorts of things that I was just naturally curious about. I would also try to talk to my grandpa who has passed away. I had a couple of experiences where I felt like he was really there and things like that. And I didn't think anything. I just thought these things were kind of normal.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really think about it, but it just felt normal for me. And probably in my early 20s, when I was also open to like getting psychic readings, of course, mostly with scammers, but a couple of times I would meet people who genuinely felt like they were reading my soul and make predictions that would happen and stuff. I met a couple of psychics who I actually had been told this a few times by psychics, but I know that this can be a lie, but that I had psychic abilities, I had medium abilities I hadn't quite tapped into. And I would sort of like, okay, I would like not really know what to do with that. But I met a couple that were younger psychics and sort of took me under their wing and gave me some advice of ways to develop my abilities. Mm-hmm. And I started to, not really thinking about it. And then through like a series of events, which this is really common, like through different traumas, adult traumas and different, heartbreak and stuff like that. And also trying different things, trying different healings, starting to meditate more, starting to use crystals more, starting to use crystals in my third eye, which is a really, I think can be a huge way of opening your third eye, which I can talk about more. I suddenly felt like my abilities were really developing. And when people would ask me advice, I would, especially about like, how does my ex feel or what job, I don't know what to do. Again, I was just naturally giving this input, and predictions started happening in a way that was like creepy, like literally predicting to the day people would get certain jobs. Yeah. Naming companies people would get jobs for. Things that they didn't believe because they were like, oh, well, I've never worked for that company, so I don't know. But then it would happen. And though I mentioned that because it reinforced to me that this wasn't just random, that I did have an ability. Right. And then I started doing different classes and different things to keep developing. And then like it was sort of a side gig that just kept kind of growing, mostly through word of mouth. Yeah. And that's kind of how it is now. It's not something I really want to do full time because it's very exhausting. You're also dealing with a lot of cynical people, although it's become more and more, there's a million people on TikTok talking about it, which also is a double-edged sword. But anyway, so that's hopefully I answered your question with that. The different clairs, these are different types of abilities you have. So clairvoyant is the most known, and clairvoyant is a knowing of something. It's just kind of knowing something's going to happen. Right. Clairaudient is hearing, audient, like hearing words, you know. Where I have a few different ones. What's the other one that I listed?
Clairsentience.
Clairsentient is like a feeling,
like a body,
right, in your body, like just feeling like something's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Which you can't quite put into words, but you just feel. So I have all three of these abilities. And they all kind of overlap, but they're all a little different.
It makes sense to me how they might overlap because, like, what you were saying about the knowing, I was thinking like, oh, you have like a knowing in your mind, but you also have like a knowing in like your hands. It's weird. Like your palms start sweating,
It's the most confusing thing about psychic readings, and I really do believe that most, if not everyone, can grow these abilities.
It sounds like going to the gym.
Yeah, but it's learning like a new muscle, right? It's like working a new muscle at the gym that you're like, I didn't know my hamstrings could do that. But the most confusing thing, just like trauma, is learning how to silence the cynical brain and the ego that's like, you're not that psychic, or like whatever, like what are you doing? This is so dumb, or you know what I mean? Like whatever that voice does, and learning to not listen to that voice as much and listen to the abilities, which is kind of along the lines of listening to your higher self too.
Yes.
Because I do incorporate that in my readings when I meditate and stuff like that. So it's kind of, and again, like these things happen all different ways. It's kind of like learning how to not listen to your mind as much and listening to your soul. Well, what the fuck does that mean? It's confusing, but that's basically,
all I'm going to say is I think Big Pharma demonized the word empathy and empathic.
Yes. Oh, really? What, how do you think in terms of?
I'm just saying, because it's like if a guy on a dating app says that he is an empath, or if a girl says that she's an empath, they are automatically the most insufferable person that you've ever came across.
Yes.
And I really do think, because I have a relationship to the word empathy that you have, like as a kid, I felt other people's pain to my bones.
And you're probably, that probably means that you have.
To my bone. Like I legitimately, like I would have to like take off from school because I was so.
Did it make you uncomfortable?
Upset.
Kind of when you would look at other people when they were in pain or embarrassed, it would almost make you uncomfortable. That's a pretty good sign that you have empathic.
Movies really affected me.
Same.
Like, one time.
Especially animal stuff, but also just animal stuff. I mean, animal pain.
My older brother was obsessed with Titanic.
Oh, no.
And we were watching Titanic, and there's the scene where all like the dead bodies are in the ocean and they all froze to death, and the mom is holding the baby.
Yeah.
In that scene, I had my so I was probably 6 or 7, and my little brother was just born, and I ran downstairs to my mom and I just grabbed the baby and I was sobbing. I couldn't control myself, and I was just like, I'll always protect you. I couldn't go to school the next day. I was so upset. I've had other instances where like I've seen something like that, especially with babies on television, and and my parents would be like, "What is wrong with her?"
It's just a movie, whatever.
Yeah. And I'm like, the baby.
It's almost like you experience the trauma.
Yes, exactly.
And,
so I have that relationship to empathic feelings, and I described myself back before saying that you had empathy was like a buzz thing.
Yeah.
I always describe myself as being someone with a lot of empathy. And I think sometimes I did use it as a crutch. Maybe I let my trauma responses override. Right. Yeah. And kind of use it as an excuse for, why I am freaking out at something as, a college kid, whatever. Right. So I see that aspect of it. But I really do think that what you were saying of, when you talk about needing to work on your inner child, people hear that and are like, I'm an adult. I don't need to do that.
Yeah, what? Like, that's
they like
so
literally reject it.
Well, I think a lot of people, both men and women, maybe men a little bit more, and then also older generations are like, can't you just like suck it up and like feel better?
Suck it up.
But and I think this is really sad, but it makes sense. Again, using kind of logical brain, ego brain, that happened a long time ago. I'm okay.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
It's still in your body, and
your
that's
bones
why
remember.
Yeah, your body remembers. It's in your body. It's in your nervous system, and it's in your emotions. And probably that's why you have certain behaviors you don't understand. And even if you can say, well, I have this and I have that, and I'm happy, probably if you really got real, there's certain things you have issues with, and that's related, things that you don't fully logically understand. And I just want to say one thing really quick, because I've dealt with this a little bit, of people and their cynicism with being an empath since it's become a trendy thing. I saw somebody post, and he probably won't watch this, but maybe a comedian post a few months ago. I almost commented, but I didn't. That like, anyone who says they're an empath is really a narcissist.
Yes,
and,
I've heard that.
And I wrote a whole big thing, and then I didn't respond, which maybe makes me not a narcissist, but I don't know. But anyway, I was like, this is a big can of worms, and I don't know if I want to get into this because I think it's complicated. I believe being an empath and being a narcissist are both out of trauma. They're both trauma responses. And it's a spectrum. It's the opposite ends of a spectrum. And both can be unhealthy. Narcissism is thrown around now like fucking everything.
Yeah.
Just like being an empath is sort of thrown around now. But most people fall on the spectrum in one end or the other. Doesn't mean they're necessarily narcissists, doesn't mean they're necessarily empathic, but most people fall in that on some level. Because, and this is where it gets a little complicated. I talked about this with Karen when I was on anyway, on her podcast. But I believe the empath abilities often are brought out more through trauma when you're a kid, because you have to do things, you have to understand adults' emotions in a way you don't understand why, but usually it's because your parents, are having conflict and stuff like that. But it's like a chicken egg thing. Probably you also have past lives where you're like a healer if you believe in past lives, and you have these, it's in your lineage, which I do believe I probably was. My point is that like, it doesn't, just because like this guy's example was he knew an empath who just talked over him the whole time. And so he's like, so this person's really a narcissist. And every empath I know just talks over me, that they say they're feeling things and they just are interrupting you. And a lot of people commented a lot of different things, but that doesn't necessarily make you an empath. I mean, it doesn't necessarily make you a narcissist, but
Right.
Someone could get really excited, and it doesn't mean they have healthy communication styles. And I do believe a lot of time empaths also have ADD, which is a whole other thing. But my point is that they're both a reaction out of trauma, and how you handle them, just like how you handle your trauma, affects your behavior. It doesn't mean necessarily that they don't, like, being an empath doesn't exist.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It still requires kind of working on and dealing with, and so
Yeah.
anyway, it's kind of, I don't know if I articulate exactly what I
No,
articulate,
I think you articulated it very, very well. Because I do agree. I think if people were more trauma informed, I think people would see again, we're not doctors.
Yes.
But from just what I've seen on the internet and whatever, I've heard that there are certain DSM medical disorders that are brought about by trauma, like borderline disorder that is brought about by trauma. And I had a friend one time who was like, I'm so scared that I'm going to get a bipolar diagnosis or bipolar or borderline. And I didn't have the vocabulary or the ability to say, like, well, when you look at your trauma history, that doesn't, it's not that you have a broken brain. It's not that you're a inherently bad person.
Right.
It just makes sense that this could be, where you're at now as an adult as a result of childhood trauma.
It's just learned behavior.
And
it's not a death sentence.
Yes.
These things I think can be worked on through trauma therapy as well as medication, but it doesn't have to,
Absolutely.
none of them, I don't think, I know maybe other people would disagree, but I don't think any of these, I know there's some more extreme than others, but I don't think any of them have to be permanent.
Right.
Usually.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And I am sitting here like we are two sound mind women that are educated, but I do understand that there is the other side of this coin where there are people who are on the internet that are essentially scammers that are like, no, you can heal your body. You can change this, and are like completely against medication and healing, and it's like, why did that person drive their car off the bridge? Oh, they stopped their medication because they were, on the, there's like it's called the woo to Q pipeline, you can be someone that is into all of this and all of a sudden, you're at the insurrection. So that's not what we're talking about.
I just had this conversation with a friend of mine a few weeks ago, because I do think like once you go down the rabbit hole of believing some of these things, especially with social media, you can really fall hard where you're like, I believe in this. And so you're like, QAnon, that's been what we've seen in the last few years in particular.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the rebellious spirit of a lot of spiritual people. But there was it really got extreme the last few years with the QAnon thing. I don't want to keep using that word or talking about it, but you really saw this happen with the spiritual community where it was mind-blowing for me. People that I think are so emotionally intelligent, talking about things and being anti-media and stuff like that. So that's a part of it. But yes, it's really easy to fall down the rabbit hole, but I do believe that most people I really like in the spiritual world use their rational brain and also are open-minded to where they get their information from, maybe do a little bit of research, but aren't just extreme with these things, and also understand that their trauma can sometimes inform their trust issues with these things too. You know what I mean? Because I do think that's a part of people who are like, I'm just anti all mainstream media. And it's like, don't you think that's a little extreme?
Right.
You know, like, do you have an issue trusting, you know? So anyway, I think it's a little bit of a complicated issue, but I think most healthy spiritual people are not as extreme, but healthy is also really relative. But it's
healthy is relative.
We've been in a really particularly interesting time where I think some of these things have really reached like a climax with the dichotomy. And I think some people believe this, and maybe some of the people who are talking about that you like, I think potentially this has been part of a plan for humanity, if you believe any of that, which I, again, believe kind of, but I can also be a little bit skeptical.
Dipping my toe in it.
That we were meant to reach this kind of really, really extreme place where we're kind of being forced to see things in extreme ways and figure out what we really believe. And so it can be complicated, you know?
Ooh,
I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. And people are like, this bitch is crazy. But I'm not, I swear.
No, you're not at all. And we legitimately could talk about what we just talked about for forever.
And I know we should talk about
No,
we are. I'm sorry if I talk too much about some of this.
No, you're not. It's very educational and informative. Okay, so you as a psychic healer, not full time, but you have a website.
I have clients.
You have clients.
It's like my secondary or third work, but it's definitely something I do pretty consistently, and I have a lot of regulars, and I mostly have regulars because I think I help them and not just sell them fairy tales.
It's a good word of mouth business. Absolutely. So do you have clients that come to you looking for weight loss? I had an episode a few weeks ago where I found a video on TikTok where it was...
This could go a lot of ways.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lots of videos on TikTok. No, but it was this person doing Reiki healing for weight loss.
Oh, interesting.
And I listened to it. And I've
listened to
I love Reiki.
Reiki is awesome.
I love it. Like, I had COVID, not this past July, the July before, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even work because my brain was just out to lunch.
And that's like autoimmune stuff. Yeah, for sure.
And I literally just sat on TikTok lives, people doing Reiki healing, and I don't know if it did anything, but it made me feel better. And I didn't have the functionality. I didn't have the capacity to do anything else. So I'm like, all right, I like Reiki, so I might as well do this.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I ask about this is because I do see a lot of people online, you know, saying like, oh, this is Reiki for weight loss. And in my own head, I've conceptualized it as like, maybe it's like, you're not going to like sit through this, 5-minute Reiki video and all of a sudden drop 10 pounds, but maybe your choices in how you proceed will be different. Like all of a sudden you'll have the desire to go for a 20-minute walk that you didn't have before, or you're going to,
or stop yourself from eating a whole bag of potato chips and just eat a quarter bag of the potato chips or whatever.
So do you have people coming to you looking for weight loss?
Probably not as a goal. But I have, because generally speaking, most clients, and I think I have a few friends that are healers. Well, I have a few friends that are readers. Healers are a little bit different, but specifically psychic readers. And I think the majority of people, I've had a few people come for health issues, definitely.
Okay.
But the majority of people come for love or career.
That makes sense.
And sometimes family issues. And then fourth, I'd say, is health issues.
Yeah.
But I will say that through my readings, and then also because I know a good amount about healing, and I sometimes do healing work with some of my clients, their self-image is almost always I can't say this for everybody because I don't always get into this, but the ones that I do get into this, and I know them, I've done a number of readings for them, and then also sometimes healings, the way they feel about themselves, their attractiveness, and that often has to do with their body image, almost always, if not always, affects their love life, what's going on with certain people, with certain men, certain women, their love situations. Whether or not, how much they're aware of that can be a little bit, a spectrum, but so they might not come to me for that, but they certainly can use help for that. And a lot of time through the work with me, they do, we do work on that.
Yeah, I have to say personally, getting into a relationship, and I've been with Joe for 2 years now, I feel like in the back of my mind, I knew this was going to happen, but I did not realize what it was going to bring up for me when I got into a serious relationship.
Oh, interesting.
And how
that makes sense.
It's like, oh, I have weird food things. Like I'm unconsciously putting this piece of food that I ate, the wrapper, at the bottom of the trash bag,
right.
like
things that you did naturally on your own.
Yeah.
Especially when you live with somebody.
Right.
You can't.
I think living together was the major piece of that.
You can't hide those things.
You can't hide those things. And like,
and maybe, I don't know if he ever acknowledged them, but I know I experienced that at times. Oh no. Okay. Well,
he's no.
He's
like, let's get Taco Bell.
Right. But you notice them.
Oh yeah.
Because he might see them or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And like maybe he has said something that like triggers me into being
and it might
like,
even be an innocent thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know where I was going with that, but
no, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
And even just like in how starting this podcast, it's like, now I got to edit. I got to look at myself on video. And it's like my feelings about myself completely impacted, because it's like, why do I feel like I don't have the ability to do this thing that I really want to do?
Oh, I'm sure that was a part of it. And I know I feel that, as I was telling you, like I want to be doing more, TikTok videos and stuff. And I know that's definitely a part of it, as much as it's maybe not the main thing, but I know it's definitely a big part of it. Like how you look and having to watch yourself and all these things. Sometimes I'm in awe of the people that just record naturally, no makeup. I mean, a lot of time they're gorgeous, but still not always, and I'm like, I wish I could just do that so easily,
Yeah. It's like exposure therapy. You just got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. But this sort of falls in line with what I was saying to you earlier in terms of like, if you, understand about like manifesting work, that a big part of that work, which is a giant can of worms, and I won't go on another huge tangent, but, manifesting is like law of attraction, but better, because it's really like simplifying it. And I believe generally, and a lot of people believe it's connected to like quantum physics, that your subconscious is what attracts what you get.
Yeah,
and
I agree. I believe that.
Reprogram that. And again, a lot of that is informed by trauma, and then it's informed a lot of time by your parents and different things you kind of, without even realizing, absorbed different beliefs and assumptions about yourself through your insecurities, through your ego a lot of the time, and a lot of time because of trauma. But you can reprogram these things, and your self-concept is really is most important than anything else. And self-concept means how you see yourself pertaining to the world, and also your own, how you look, how you feel, all these kind of basic things. And a lot of time these things are just habitual. And so if you thought of yourself as overweight or ugly, or, you just keep this is the problem with our brain when we just rely on our ego and our logical brain. These things are just habitual. So you just keep assuming I'm not that attractive, or I never lose weight, or you know what I mean? Or women who are, it can be something very general too. Women who are overweight never get men, or just things you know what I mean? And you just your brain just keeps saying, well, look, that's like that thing you believe, it's true.
Proof of concept.
Exactly, because you keep attracting, this is again the sort of clusterfuck or catch-22 of manifesting. You keep assuming these things, and so therefore you keep attracting these things.
Yeah.
And your brain just keeps saying, look, this is what you believed, and it's true, So anyway, it's a little bit complicated, but it's kind of simple too at the same time.
Yeah, I think what is complicated about it is because even if you get to a place where it's like, I don't believe these things, something still, and so I don't believe these things, and then all of a sudden your life is getting better in like little ways.
Yeah.
But then something happens.
Right.
And you're like,
if you have a setback or a negative
if you have a
day,
setback, like all of a
fall
sudden
into those really core insecure beliefs.
Yes. Like,
see, I told you overweight girls never have good things happen to them, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't deserve money. I don't get money. I don't deserve money. And then it's like, no, I deserve money. I'm getting it. Things are looking good. Your bills are getting paid. Boom. Tax bill in the mail that you weren't expecting.
Oh,
that
yeah,
is
yeah.
a test. Like that is like,
Yeah,
am I
setbacks.
am I going to let this setback, just reinforce this belief that
Yeah.
I don't get money? It
Yeah,
always gets taken
right.
from me. Or
Yeah.
is it,
I can't have nice things, or
yeah.
I
And
can't.
I do also, maybe this is just me being able to, I do believe that part of the getting out of it and rewiring that core belief is having that setback and being like, of
Yes.
fucking course this would happen. This happens to me. And then immediately being like, okay, that pity party was really fun for a little bit. I'm out of this. We're going to pay it. It's going to be fine. And then you move forward. And then like the next time you do get an unexpected bill, you have to go to the dentist office and get a root canal and spend $3,000. This is not at all a personal story.
Oh, no, God, I understand. Yeah.
You're like, now it's like, now I look at that $3,000 that I owe, the dentist office, or I'm going to have to owe. And I'm like, okay. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
is.
lucky enough to have a job where I have a salary and I have some dental insurance that at least pays for part of it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, you really have to, it's a lot of work to not just be like, I don't deserve this, or this is what I get.
Right. Usually when
Did that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And usually, from my own experience and also working with different clients, and I was just saying this, I think 2 days ago to a client, usually when I've really finally made some changes in how I approach things, and that's when even years of doing therapy and healing work, I've had to have these moments like kind of people might call, what do you call when you're like at your, like rock bottom moments, not necessarily, but there's different types of rock bottom moments, or just moments where you're like, God, I feel miserable. Like this isn't working out, this is working out. Usually it's been when I've been there at my most desperate, where I finally am like, I have to change the way I do things, or I have to change the way I look at things, where I've then like learned more about manifesting or something like that, and started to understand, oh, my belief system is affecting what I'm attracting. And that a lot of the time I have limiting beliefs I didn't even realize I had, negative assumptions about myself and life and money and love and appearances or weight. And I need to start really trying to identify those and seeing how they're affecting my life, And I experience that with clients when we get to sometimes what is causing issues with like a person. There's many things, but one of the things will often be how they feel about their attractiveness.
Yeah.
Sometimes their weight, but in general, if they don't think they're sexy, or they don't think they're pretty, or they don't think they're attractive as a man, or hot, or whatever you want to call it. I definitely have experienced multiple times two people who were overweight as a kid, and that is very much, and not always overweight, sometimes maybe scrawny, or they didn't feel attractive as a kid. But overweight, I think, is sort of a little bit of its own niche, and that has affected the way they see themselves as an adult and forever. And they maybe dealt with that a little bit, but not really fully. And a lot of time I've noticed with men and women, probably more men, but again, mostly because they haven't done therapy when I've experienced this, guys I've dated sometimes, that when they've been overweight as a kid and then they lost weight as an adult, even if sometimes maybe, it's been a roller coaster, but overall have been more skinny as an adult, they crave validation from women because they felt so unattractive as a kid. I've encountered a lot of people like that, a lot of comics too. And I've experienced that a little bit too, but I was mostly skinny as a child, and weight was not an issue at all.
Okay.
And it was then as an adult, especially when I got sick and had, these autoimmune illnesses, I gained weight. I think I gained like 20 to 25 pounds within a few weeks when I first got sick. And
with lupus
and thyroid problems, and both can really cause weight gain. And that really forever changed the way I would see myself. I'd see weight gain because I always had amazing metabolism and stuff like that. And so that's where I've had a very up and down, my weight has been very sporadic the last decade or so.
Did your value system sort of shift when you did have this dramatic weight gain? Because like 20 something pounds in the span of what you just said is a lot.
It was very scary.
It was.
Because it was always so easy for me to lose weight and then to gain so much weight so quickly. It was almost surreal. I almost felt like I wasn't in my body. You know what I mean? It was like
you're watching.
Not only did I have a lot of brain fog because of what was going on, and I had a really extreme version of thyroid problems in particular, where my numbers went up to such an extreme rate within a few weeks that the hospital was like, we've never seen numbers like off the charts. And of course, I then took medication and little by little got better, but it's still been a roller coaster. My weight since then, my metabolism. What was the initial question? Sorry. Did it change?
Because I think that it's not that I think it's kind of universal that societally there's a value. Like I put value in being thin. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of realizing now it's more like I have value in loving myself. Like that's really what it is. So I think societally, you know, like when you look at yourself 25 pounds lighter, like societally you're valued more. So like, how did you feel about yourself? Or was it mostly like, I could have cancer? Like, you know, like, was it more of like a fear?
In the early phase where I first got sick, it was just like, what is going on? Like wanting to figure out, because it took a few weeks to find out what was going on. But after that happened and I knew what was happening, and even after then getting medicated and mostly having my weight go down, but it's still been, you know, up and down since then. One thing I came to realize was, well, a bunch of different things. One was I really took it for granted that I had my metabolism was amazing growing up.
One of the lucky ones, like in your mind, you're thinking, I'm just one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, and I just, you know, and generally my family has pretty good metabolism. My dad has dealt with some weight gain, and I definitely have probably more followed him than like, whereas my mom is like super skinny, my sister's super skinny.
Okay.
We're also both taller, my dad and I, and also I have big boobs and a big ass, and so like things that I think are great.
Yeah.
But you know, I generally gain weight like my dad a little bit more easily, and whatever, all these things. But so I started to have to finally look at weight gain, because I hadn't had to really look at that before.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And again, it wasn't like I wasn't doing it in like a stuck up sort of way. It just was, I just had a great metabolism.
Yeah. It wasn't a part of your life. You had other things. This wasn't it.
I did feel lucky, you know, because I'd have friends comment even in like high school and college, like, you're so skinny, but you have big boobs. Like, you're so lucky, you know? And so I knew I was lucky in that area. And probably, you know, I started to gain a little, you know, weight. I gained weight a little more easily before I got sick too, you know, in my early 20s, but it was when I got sick that my metabolism really changed. And then I think I did start to look at body image and how it affects, like, you know, women that are skinnier, you know, get more attention, and these things I started to dissect and look at a little more than I had before.
Right.
Because not that I ever have felt like obese or anything, but I definitely fluctuate a lot. So depending on how I'm feeling about my body during those times can really affect how I feel about body image and what, you know, society's norms, and, you know, women that look like they're 90 pounds and get attention, and just start looking at these things a little bit more than I had when I was younger. And it was just like a given that I, you know, didn't really gain weight and stuff like that, you know?
Right. You know, that's another thing. It's like, I feel like when you see someone that looked one way, like was really thin, and then they come out, you know, like maybe they go into hiding or something, and they come out and, and like now all of a sudden they're in this different body. You know, I don't think people think like, oh, maybe they got sick. I think people think that person gave up.
Right. Oh yeah.
Which
people
is so
often
weird.
jump
it's like,
to
I'm ill.
Right. And you definitely see that with like celebrities.
Absolutely.
On social media, people are like, what happened to her?
We come from the era of Jumbo Jessica Simpson.
She definitely has dealt with it.
Yeah.
Right. People would just be like, she's really let herself go.
Right.
Or, you know, or when she got pregnant, she really, or whatever. And of course, 9 times out of 10, it's about a woman. You know, I know there's been some of that with men, but just, and maybe a little more in recent years, but generally it still seems to be women, either their age, whether it's they got plastic surgery or they didn't, or their weight gain is commented on so much.
Yeah.
And I get a big part of this is, you know, that so many celebrities are constantly taking pictures, or paparazzi's constantly taking pictures. So that's a big part of it. But man, it looks so exhausting. It looks so, I feel so bad for some of these women, which is, I think, also why I have such a mixed feeling about like putting myself out there on social media more and
Right.
stuff like that, even though I like to when I feel good about myself, but obviously I have mixed feelings when I don't feel good about
It's
myself.
so funny to hear you say you have mixed feelings. It's like, girl, you're in a whole movie. You're in a whole movie.
When I'm playing character, totally easy, but I mean like on TikTok.
Right. As me, Jessica,
right,
yeah.
just commenting on anything with my frizzy hair and maybe, my 5 extra pounds when I have my period or whatever,
Right.
Or just in general, I don't have much makeup on or all these different things.
Okay, not to be creepy, but you just said like maybe weigh 5 extra pounds when you're on your period. Do you feel
No, this isn't creepy. Let's talk about this.
Okay, so like, does your cycle affect your abilities?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, I do think this is again to get people to a territory where some people are like, this girl's so fucking weird. But I know that a lot of you are going to relate. I do think the moon cycles can affect my cycle sometimes. And when people get weird about stuff like this, and also a lot of guys get weird, and women, but a lot of guys get cynical about like astrology, which is a whole other can of worms. But I like to say, and I've heard a few of my healer friends say, like, so you believe the moon affects the tides, but not us as humans?
Not us.
Like
when we're made of water.
80% water, 90% water or something. Like, obviously the moon and planets affect us. But anyway, so that can sometimes, I forget if it's a new moon or full moon that often can bring on my period. Well, both, but I think a new moon sometimes can bring it on sooner. And I think it can sometimes accelerate my ability.
Interesting.
A lot of things can too. Sometimes even having like a drink or two can accelerate my
I love
ability.
it. That's so fun.
I think that just probably just calms down my ego or something a little
Right,
bit.
right.
Which not that I have an issue with at this point with readings, but it can just make things just flow.
Yeah,
you know
we're
what I mean?
human. Yeah.
So a lot of things can affect it, but I do think the moon cycle can
Interesting.
definitely affect it,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. I love that. Yeah, I think of everything in like these like 30-day cycles. Or 28-day cycles. I really do. Like once I realized like there's a full moon once a month and we get our periods once a month, I'm like, oh.
The moon definitely. I have a number of friends who will get their period a little early when it's a full moon or new moon.
Yeah.
Not always, but I think that definitely can affect things for sure.
Interesting.
As well
Yeah.
as, of course, being around other women and their cycle.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
We can definitely sync up. But like, why does that happen?
Right.
It's
That's
very
weird.
interesting.
Yeah, that's like that's a weird thing.
There's a lot of weird things going on energetically between people, and I don't know, just a lot.
Okay, so I don't know much about lupus other than it affects. It's just like this broad thing that can affect those who have it so differently. I know people that have had like
you can die from it.
I don't have a better term for this, but I know of people that have. It seems like it's like eaten their brain. Like they're a shell of their former selves.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a spectrum, and it can definitely get very fatal.
Right.
It can affect your. I'm trying to remember if it's both your liver or kidney or just your liver, but it can.
I think it can affect your kidney.
It can make them shut down.
Yeah. Selena Gomez had to get a kidney.
Right. Yes. Right. Did she get a transplant?
She did.
And, similar to thyroid issues and also all autoimmune illnesses, to what degree it affects somebody, how quickly this happens. And a lot of people similar to me have that virus that starts. I've read a lot about this in recent years. There's some people actually believe it's Epstein-Barr.
Oh my God.
That there are different types of Epstein-Barr that hasn't been studied. I don't know if anyone knows the medical medium, but he talks about this a lot. There's a lot of different versions of Epstein-Barr that haven't been studied and learned, and so there's a lot of mystery around Epstein-Barr. So some people believe that you get a version of Epstein-Barr when your immune system is starting to be attacked, which is what autoimmune illnesses are, and a lot of time one little thing might set it off. And again, I've read a lot of different theories about this, but it's what I think it is your cells stop absorbing certain hormones. So with thyroid, they stop absorbing thyroid. It can be a lot of different things, but so then your immune system goes into overdrive.
Okay.
But unfortunately, it starts attacking itself without understanding that's what it's doing. And what illness you end up getting, I don't know how that's determined, but so it can be an array of different autoimmune illnesses from lupus to Hashimoto's, there's thyroid problems to celiacs to, there's a lot. and these things have just increased over time. Autoimmune illnesses. There's a lot of arthritis. All of these things are your immune system attacking itself.
Yeah. Crazy.
It's so weird, but
it's so weird.
I do think it has something to do with trauma, environment. I mean, you could say the same thing about like cancer. I think similarly, like different cancers have a lot to do with environment, probably your food, and then your traumas.
Right.
I think, some people might disagree with the trauma thing with cancer, but I think these things can affect it. And then maybe your belief system a tiny bit.
Yeah.
But not that you bring on cancer or bring on autoimmune illnesses, but I do think the other things are probably more significant, but.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. It makes total sense.
But a lot of hormonal things like the thyroid problems and lupus, there's an array of side effects that can happen, and some are way more serious than others. I don't know why. For me, I'm sure that if we had really good, especially like modern medicine doctors who study this stuff, why my thyroid issues got way worse than my lupus issues when I got sick. But the thyroid issues got much more quickly. Like I had so many side effects that were more associated with thyroid problems. And the thyroid actually does affect a lot of things. And in a way I had no idea. It affects your metabolism, your hair, your skin, your energy levels, your brain function. You can suddenly have sensitivity to temperature, which I also have. Raynaud's, which is another autoimmune thing. It's a subtle thing, but like if I get really, really cold, my blood vessels will like almost stop working and my hands will get like numb and blue. And so like all these weird things, and then lupus is a little more serious of it, or can be more serious in terms of how quickly it can get fatal, in terms of how it can affect your kidney, I think your liver. I don't know why that is, but it just can much more quickly affect those organs.
Right.
Thankfully, I never experienced that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it also affects hair. A lot of time, all autoimmune things affect your joints. These are like common autoimmune illnesses. They affect these different things: your joints, your energy level, your hair, your skin. Like those four seem to be common with a lot of autoimmune illnesses, and your metabolism.
I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like thinking about times where like this has affected me.
And also COVID, I think, long-term like COVID results, I think are similar to autoimmune illnesses. Some people believe it's like autoimmune illness because your body, your immune system goes into overdrive and doesn't know how to deal with it.
So that's so interesting.
Does that relate? Do you relate to that?
I do relate to that. I have, as you were talking, I thought of 3 instances where I had crazy autoimmune things happen to me.
And you were like, what?
And I'm
fuck?
like, what? And then I look back and it's like, I was so fucked up.
Yeah. And you don't know if you don't have frame of reference. You're like, what's happening?
And like, so 7th grade, I've always hated school. I was always like, I wasn't a bad kid. I was a pleasure to have in class, but like I had to like bring home good grades, and like I wasn't good in school. So I was stressed all the time. So boom, Epstein-Barr. I had mono in 7th grade.
So that, and also like my sister had some similar issues to me, not as strongly, but she also had mono when she was a kid. And I think once it's in your body,
it's in
also,
there. Yeah.
It can potentially become more autoimmune things.
Yeah. So that I literally remember being in 7th grade and like having trouble like walking up and down the stairs. Like
this is what I'm talking about.
Bones hurt. Okay.
Yeah, you're like my experience too. You're like, what is this?
That was that. Freshman year, it was first semester freshman year. In a new environment now. I'm at college. I'm 45-minute drive away from my parents' house, but still it's a big change.
Yeah, and you're alone and all this stuff. Yeah.
Bell's palsy. I woke up one day, half my face is frozen.
And that's autoimmune, right?
Autoimmune. It cleared up pretty quickly once I got on steroids. Like by the time I went back for the second semester, I had some residual things, it's funny. I was like at one of my friend's wedding, and I was talking to her dad who had Bell's palsy, and his face was still a little bit, and he was like, "Did you have Bell's palsy?" I was like, "I did," and he's like, "You kind of talk out of the side of your mouth." So I've seen it's way worse when I drink, but like it doesn't affect me.
You still get it a little bit, just a little,
like 1/10 of a degree. So that was that. Senior year of college, even more stressful because now I have to like be a person going out into the world.
And stress does affect these things.
So stressed, full psoriasis.
Psoriasis is also autoimmune, yeah.
Completely head to toe.
How terrifying.
It was, and I'm looking back at all of this, and at what point was I going to be like, oh, my environment is
and
like,
how I'm handling stress.
how I'm handling
Yeah.
this. And you know, I'm very lucky those things cleared up. It went away. You know, I just know now, like, not to ever like use like fragranted soaps or lotions or anything, because that'll aggravate the psoriasis. But yeah, as you were talking, I'm like, wow, I have 3 distinct pillars in my life where these things have happened.
Yes.
Where my body, like, that's what I'm saying. As a
been
kid,
like, what is happening?
yeah, like as a kid, when I said like I would feel things happening in my bones, I'm an adult now, and I'm having like medical issues occur because I'm like my body is reacting to my stress.
Yes. And I blamed all these other things with my autoimmune illnesses, trauma, and environment. But I also didn't mention my level of stress was really intense. When I first got sick, I was in film school, in graduate film school.
You had experienced 9/11.
I experienced 9/11, which a few years earlier. And the year before, or at this point, probably like 6 to 9 months before, my apartment burned down. So
oh my God, that's like huge fear.
I had a lot of stress going on. And
I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
It was, yeah. I was really lucky that my room didn't burn down. My roommates did, but I still lost a lot of things because the firemen like threw all my stuff everywhere. I mean, it was still very stressful and
traumatic.
So I totally, and even I still doing it, like undermine, like didn't make a big deal about these things, but these things also contributed to these things. So stress absolutely contributes. It's like it's in your body, and the stress and or environmental things just click it off or tick it off. Like you're saying, like I believe, you know, when my sister got mono, it was a version of Epstein-Barr that was in her body. I didn't have that growing up, but I got Epstein-Barr, or I think some version of it in that virus, this is a very common story. I've read a lot of autoimmune illness, like a lot of stories from people, very similar. It starts with a virus that people think is a cold or
yeah,
or flu.
that's what it was. Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, it's just this. But then after a week or two, at least for me, the weird symptoms start. And you're like, why can't I walk up the stairs without my hip hurting? Or why am I losing so much hair in the shower?
Or why can't I barely,
16 hours why am I sleeping 15, 16 hours a day and I'm still exhausted? Things that are just different. And
so similar to COVID now that I think about it.
Oh, COVID. COVID, people's bodies responded similarly.
Yeah.
In an autoimmune way.
But you know, it's so funny because even when I had COVID, I didn't think like this is going to last forever. I did. Yeah. I did think like if my brain is like this.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Like, I'll never be able to do stand up. I'll never be able to read a book. Like I couldn't even watch Housewives. Like my brain was so.
It sounds like the brain fog.
My brain fog was next level when I had COVID.
It sounds like it's really intense with COVID.
It lasted a week. I'm just lucky. Yeah. But I also think Reiki.
What?
The Reiki that I did.
I do. Yeah. No, And Reiki is also like a gateway to healing work because there's a lot of people do it, but also, and there's varying levels of talented Reiki healers. I've gone to a few that have been off the charts, and some of them use more psychic and medium abilities, and some of them don't. It's, it's a very broad thing, but I think probably it did help you, the Reiki. I'm sure.
Hey, I'm fine now.
But, oh shit, I was going to say something else, but I forgot. But anyway, I think I've said a lot of things, obviously, but yeah, the autoimmune things it's really interesting. And I think that I think everybody can be affected by it because it really is just your immune system freaking out from something, whether it's stress, environmental, the Epstein-Barr episode, or all of the above. It's kind of confusing. And maybe some trauma that also was in your body, and it just trying to deal with that, and then it kind of starting to attack your body, not meaning to, but that's what happens. And like I said, there's sort of 4 or 5 basic things that often happen with all of these. Not all of them, but they're very common. And metabolism, energy, skin, hair, joints, like these are all really common, and brain fog, which is, or some sort of brain functioning.
Right.
You know?
Oh, wow.
And they all are a lot, they all of those things, even one of them alone can be a lot. Mm-hmm. But metabolism is definitely, unfortunately, a lot of the time connected to them, which obviously affects, your weight,
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Okay, we have to wrap up soon, but while I have you here,
Yeah.
I do want to talk about I guess we'll call it the concept of the higher self.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
I love this topic. I could talk about this.
Okay.
I won't talk about it a ton, but because I'm
No, I'm glad. Now, it's something... I had a concept of my higher self before I started doing somatic therapy, but I'm glad I did because it was introduced when I was doing an SE session. And all of a sudden, I had this vision of myself that isn't quite...
It makes me feel good. I don't know. I just am like having maybe it's a psychic moment. I'm like, I can feel what you're talking about. It feels like a wonderful moment.
It really, like, I never felt more safe in my life, like, truly. And, I had like my higher self here, and then I also had my inner child. I sound crazy.
No, but once you understand these things and experience them,
I can talk about it like the weather.
Yes, it's exactly. Doesn't mean you are crazy, and it doesn't mean that's all there is, but these things make sense.
Yeah.
Once you experience them.
So I pictured my higher self, and I couldn't draw a photo of her. Like it was weird, but she was like the most beautiful being.
I love it.
And I'm pretty sure she was skinny.
Well, possibly. I have a bunch of thoughts on appearance of higher self too, but yeah.
Okay. So it's like, I don't look at my higher self as like someone I'm gonna one day meet. I'm like, my higher self is myself. Like
right, which can be confusing. It's like, what does that mean? Yeah,
right. I think what helped me conceptualize higher self was when like I'm picturing my higher self, and then I'm picturing the little girl that I've known because I was her, my younger self. Like it's much easier for me to conceptualize her because I've been her. And just like this idea of like maybe this is a little bit too
go there,
intimate.
girl, go the woo, go or intimate. I was gonna say go woo, but go intimate.
But like all of a sudden it's like I was seeing like my higher self like holding my inner child and having this feeling of like
a lot of trauma work. Somehow that moment ends up happening.
Yeah.
Not
and
always,
it's like,
but yeah.
Oh, she was always there.
Yes.
And she is always here.
Yes.
And it's really weird. Like that's my relationship to it. And when we were talking about like the setbacks of like, oh, I'm not pretty enough to get these things. It's like, well, my higher self knows that I am. My higher self is pretty enough to get these things, and pretty enough isn't even a thing. So I want to hear what you have to say about higher selves. I don't really have a question.
Yeah,
it's more of
my God, no. I love, because it's a confusing topic, and I guess it's also become sort of trendy, right?
Yeah,
higher
it
self
totally
and
has.
Inner child, and both of these things are like a little abstract, and definitely people have different opinions, but this is what I believe about higher self, and I think probably a lot of people would agree with me, because this also is informed by different energy healers and readers and stuff, and different education I've done and different belief systems and philosophies. Your higher self is essentially your soul in its highest potential, and meaning highest potential. This is where gets a little bit can get abstract or also confusing, but having no inhibitions with the ego and the body, it is in the most connected to the higher source, whatever you believe that is,
right? And
it's sort of the gatekeeper also of the other worlds, whether you believe in whatever your belief system is, to God, to others, to our highest source energy. Some people believe, and I believe this is true too, and this can get complicated. I won't talk about this too much, but they're sort of, they're kind of the gatekeeper of potential timelines, potential manifesting potentials. They literally are your connection to the higher source. Again, whether you believe that's God or an energy, you believe God is an actual being, or what I believe that it's an energy that we all share and can tap into.
Right.
And I think, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Abyss, but this sort of just came up in my mind. It's an okay movie. But I think it's before like CGI got big, but they show aliens in the form of the aliens in water taking on whatever appearances they want to. And I kind of think of the higher self like that. Like it's not an end all be all of what they look like.
Right.
They can transform. But probably in their regular form, they are the way you want to look because they are your highest potential. So probably they're 20 and hot. You know what I mean?
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? But that's not like they care about that, but that's your highest potential sort of. So probably that's what you would potentially envision of.
It's very funny.
Do you know what I mean?
No, it's so funny that you said that because like growing up Catholic, we would talk about heaven and I just always thought like, oh, when you go to heaven, like you're your best looking self. And I'm like,
Well, some
I'm going to
people
be
have said
really
that.
skinny in heaven.
Some people have said that before, like in the afterlife, you're like 25 and hot.
Right,
or, you know,
right.
Or they're your hottest looking, age or whatever it
I
is.
remember being a kid being like, I have to get really hot so that when I go to heaven, I'm
God.
hot in heaven.
I blame Catholicism for that, but I love it too at the same time. I love how somehow you were like, you felt like you had to be hot in heaven.
Yeah. Because I felt like,
fucking Catholicism, but I get it.
if heaven's supposed to be paradise, I'm not going to enjoy paradise if I'm not hot.
That is so amazing.
So wicked. Oh my God, that's so funny.
I love your childhood
Yeah.
like belief system with that. But I mean, I love, but also I feel for it. But
It's very
yeah,
funny.
so higher self, I think, is really your soul in its highest potential.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I love that.
when I do readings, I basically ask to connect with people's higher selves.
Yeah, okay.
As well as my own. I do think that potentially helps my readings as I try to do that work. And connecting with my higher self has been, a lot of work I've done with some of my trauma and stuff. And again, it's like, some people might be like, this bitch is crazy. But anyone who's done this, understands this stuff. But essentially, it's connecting with your soul. And so it's learning how to tune out the ego and the mind and tap into it. And when you're able to, like you were saying before, not only can it feel amazing, but when you just let that higher self speak, again, it's sort of your highest potential. And highest is not the best word, but it's like most inhibited, purest version of you in your, the most in your essence of who you are. And it's so beautiful because it's the truest form of you. I think. Do you know what I mean?
No,
of
that's
your
beautiful.
essence.
Yeah.
How you get there is really confusing. How you connect to that is really confusing. But a big part of it is tuning out the mind to some extent. Learning how to, not letting the trauma inform your beliefs about yourself and your brain, and also potentially maybe doing some body work. And though, so like it's kind of learning how to like let the mind, body, and soul connect in its most beautiful form,
Yeah.
But essentially like not letting the mind just control, which is what a big part of modern society does and the ego without realizing it.
Oh my gosh. That was beautiful, honestly, truthfully.
I hope everybody can try to understand what I'm saying, even if they're cynical, even if their ego is like, this bitch is so dumb and crazy. Just, give it a chance. What I'm saying, let it soak in.
The girls that get it. The girls
Yeah,
that don't. And the girls is gender neutral right now is what it like
I
literally.
love how you're assuming men will not get it.
Yeah.
No. The evolved men may get it.
The evolved men will get it. I know plenty of evolved men.
I know. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
It's. Yeah. And I also think in the last few years with COVID and all the shit that's happened, a lot of crazy shit's happened. We have been pushed, and I do think potentially this was a plan somewhere or kind of in our subconscious or whatever. I could talk about that for a long time. A lot of people talk about that.
COVID is a symptom of everybody being collectively burnt out.
Right. And I think we've all been, on some level, been pushed to question our belief system. And a lot of people have ended up becoming more spiritual because they've questioned things.
Yeah.
They've had breakdowns. They've been a lot alone a lot of time. They haven't been able to rely on certain habits as much. Maybe not so much now, but definitely the first year or two with COVID. You know what I mean? So I think as a society, we're growing more spiritual. It maybe is baby steps, but
yeah,
I believe we're transforming as humans. It's just a slow process sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, Jess, I could talk to you for literally hours.
I love talking about. I'm sorry if I went on about many
You're
spiritual
You
tangents.
made my job easy. Are you kidding? No, this was so interesting. I'm really excited to listen to this one back because I really do feel like there are some juicy gems.
To keep relearning the things I'm saying. Which
yeah. Well, you have an ability to explain them in a way that the layman can understand.
Probably because I do a lot with readings and different things.
You're like, I'm from Long Island.
I can get really Italian on you if you want.
Yeah.
But also, I think that I'm used to dealing with a lot of people who are very cynical.
Yeah.
And I've thought about these things a lot and had a lot of, emotional and spiritual downloads on them. So that's part of it. But also, I'm from Long Island and I'm Italian. I can really fucking go there if I need to. But yeah, so it's been so fun talking about all this stuff. I can talk about all this stuff forever because I care about it so much. And
yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna put a pin in it. I'm gonna have to have you back on or something because there's so much we can talk about.
I'll talk more about the topic at hand, but we think we touched on it some. But
yes, and I think we talked about the top. Like we talked about our bodies and how autoimmune stuff
for sure.
Okay, where can people find you?
Variety of places, but I'd say with social media on Instagram, really Jessie Roro, JESSIERORO. Believe that's my TikTok. I need to build it up more. My show, Vision Board Comedy. I need to build that up more. That's a comedy show with some spirituality and also mini psychic readings. That's at Vision Board Comedy on Instagram and Facebook. I'm going to be building that up more. Can I plug my movie too?
Yes.
My movie, which this was not planned, but because it's a collective thing, but it has some spirituality in it, but in a fun way. It is Unpacking the movie. You can find that, that URL, not URL, but Unpacking the Movie in various on Instagram, on Facebook and Twitter. And we're, at all sorts of festivals right now.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. We're going to be at Philly and Boston in the end of September, and then Richmond also, and a bunch of others. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Guys, everything is linked in the description. So go there, click the links, follow, subscribe,
I'll
do
also
all of it.
Give you my psychic website.
So I already have it.
Okay.
I already have it.
Like, I got it.
It's in the description.
Okay, cool. Yeah, come get a reading with me. I'd love to, figure out life with you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.
Guys, we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Amazing.
Oh,
That's so
I'm
good.
sorry. I feel like I talk so much about everything, but hopefully good stuff.